Så det var som stod helt på toppen?
Ja, eller sement. Jeg var tilbake igjen, ja.
Ja, mistet nødt litt. Helvete da.
Det var en som var savnet i Bodø. Han ble funnet, eller ikke, han er ikke funnet ennå, men det ble funnet en sånn her, han heter fryseboks, at det er en av nærene våre. Når politiet skulle lete etter den, så var den, det var avisskriveri og alt om det. Men når de skulle ut og lete etter den, så var den bort. Han som hadde hentet han og flyttet han.
And prevention doesn't always work. You know, my mom never smoked a cigarette in her life, never had a drink in her life, exercised every day, still got lung cancer. So the next thing that we've really been emphasizing is early detection.
Yep.
And there's some amazing early detection tools. So anyways,
Ja, vi har mer, altså vi har anlegg i Lofoten
because
og
longevity economy is it's a great time for us to be looking at these things.
Totally agree. I totally agree. And prevention and tests, it's something that we've been covering a lot here. Brooks Tingle, come back and talk some more. President and CEO of John Hancock Insurance. This is Bloomberg.
Tok imot på støtta.
Ja, det er masse folk i frysebokser bortover.
Nå skjønner jeg hva de har gjort. Det er litt småting på det med knapp. Så trenger jeg ikke den kjøttpakken for å få litt på det.
Ja.
Det er på baksida, stikker på baksida. Og så har den lagt lister at hva lister der for så rett på toppen. Så begynner det. Og det er det jeg har lyst til.
Nei, Nvidia har rettet seg opp ganske kraftig. Amazon også. Og det strømbruddet så gikk det opp 40 poeng.
Ikke bare med
Det gikk ikke opp den strømbruddet, men det gikk opp 40 poeng på sånn. Den lille til. Vi kan ta imot det på 21,38.
Jeg håper skapet blir verdt det nå, sånn at det er en annen
Conversation.
The backdrop is sit around and wait and see what happens. Like it's just really this
Well,
has
you were
been,
kidding when we walked in, right? It's
no,
like, wait
like
and see,
I
wait and
like
see,
I
wait
said
and see.
that like kind of facetiously, but also like not. Like this has been the message out of every Fed speaker for like the last 2-3 months is like we're in wait and see mode. There is heightened uncertainty. We don't know what's going to happen with tariffs, where they ultimately settle. Like, how much is this going to affect inflation and unemployment, and like which side of the mandate is going to move further away from target? Like, this is the speech. So we have heard that really just like on repeat from so many Fed speakers, including a few today. And I would think that Bostic will probably talk about those things, but also Mike McKee is so talented and will probably push him to maybe say something a little more.
What are they waiting
point.
for? What's everybody waiting for?
I think, like, look, there's been so much chaos with, like, the rollout of tariff policy right now. And, like, are we in a pause? Are we not? You know, like, when these pauses are going to be up, what will the ultimate tariff rates be? Like, you know, where the rates are right now with China and the U.S., like, who knows if that stands at the end of the 90 days? And same with the reciprocal tariffs that for all the other countries that are right now in a 90-day pause that we're halfway through.
Right.
That's right, like, right now, that's what's keeping so many businesses and consumers on hold of like making bigger investment plans and purchases, because who knows, you could maybe wait another month and a half and maybe you'll get a better, you know, rate out of it then. So why would you pay for something right now when, you know, when that rate could change drastically over the course of the next 45 days?
Molly, I love that you said that coming in, though, but it's just a reminder that every time we have a Fed conversation, really important, or a Fed decision, they are dealing with the data set up to that point in time. And in 24 hours, 48 or a week, it could change dramatically.
Yes, and that's exactly why that they keep saying that they're data dependent and that they don't have to hurry to move policy. I mean, I think what maybe you could interpret as a little bit more moving the needle forward on the conversation today was hearing a few Fed speakers say that this could take still several more months, and like maybe an indication of like, you know, we're going to be on hold through the summer. Like the New York Fed President John Williams was saying today that they're not going to have the clarity they need come June or July, which are the next two Fed meetings. The one after that would be September.
Right.
And there was another one today who also said it's going to be, who knows, another 3 to 6 months before we know what's going to happen. So that could also, if you look into the tea leaves there, be like, all right, we're probably going to still be having this conversation through the summer.
One thing we haven't talked about as much in the last 2 weeks that we talked a lot about during April is stagflation, and whether or not people in your world are still concerned that we could be entering a stagflationary environment. Is that still a concern?
Yeah, I think that's totally fair. I mean, the conversation is definitely around low growth and higher inflation. Certainly the pause right now with the China tariffs has like brought down the risk of both of those dramatically, but the outlook is still for growth to slow meaningfully from where it was last year and for inflation to be persistently above the Fed's target. So I think that's still fair, but at least right now, the growth concerns have lessened definitely a lot since the pause on China was announced. So we've seen a lot of banks drop their recession calls in the wake of that.
All right, so phew, at least for the moment.
A little bit.
All
Slow
right.
down, but not recession.
Wait and see. It's like what
Wait
you
and
tell.
see?
It's like what you tell a toddler. Let's wait and see, like toddler, right?
Toddler economy.
Molly Smith, thank you so much. Bloomberg News economics editor. All right, everybody, across platforms here on Bloomberg Radio, TV, YouTube, Bloomberg Originals. We're going to toss it over to our own Michael McKee, of course.
Oppsummerer dagen kort. Vi åpna kraften ned i hele Europa og USA. 400 poeng. USA ble nedgradert, rentene stiger i taket, gull gikk rett oppover. USA åpna kraftig ned. Nvidia var ned 3,5%, Apple var ned 2,5%, Broadcom var ned over 2%, Tesla var ned 5%, Microsoft var i grønt, Amazon var i rødt. Alt var i rødt. Og så var det snakk om at Putin skulle holde en telefonsamtale. En telefonsamtale med Donald Trump, og så gikk vi opp på det, tror jeg. Jeg vet ikke hva vi tror det gikk opp på. Og så gikk vi opp 400 poeng rett etter åpning. Og så, når han var ferdig med å prate, så har vi gått litt grann ned. Så det var det som skjedde. Ikke noe annet. Ingenting. Alt er nedgradert. Ikke noe som er bra. Bare at Putin og han pratet sammen. Det er oppsummeringen.
Is economics and international.
And where our rates are, I think, are mildly restrictive in the marketplace, trying to get inflation back to our 2% target because it's been too high for too long. I think the rest of it is really about perceptions of risk in the marketplace. And uncertainty and the volatility that might be present in the market, I think leads to there being an extra premium on it. And so, the market will decide what its price needs to be, but it doesn't surprise me very much that we see it at a higher level relative to the things that we've done with our rate in the last year.
Well, we've got downgrade now that pushed rates up early this morning and overnight, and then it started to fade back a bit. The same thing that sort of happened after Fitch and S&P did their downgrades. Does it worry you that they are not pricing in more of credit risk to the United States, given that we're no longer AAA?
Well, you'll have to talk to the raters about sort of how they interpret these things. What I would say is this. So much of our economy is based on faith that we will deliver on the things that we say that we promise for the future. When you start to see the markets waver a little bit, I think people are asking the question, do we still have that same level of faith? I think the sign that rates have started to come back down and the markets are sort of returning back to a normal stasis suggests that they think there is that likelihood moving forward. And we'll just have to see where it goes. I mean, I always want to make sure I understand what the price of credit and debt is, but the markets will make a determination of that on their own.
Well, if they are higher and stay higher as they are right now, does that affect your calculation of what you have to do?
Well, it depends. One of the things that will be interesting to see is how businesses and consumers respond to the environment. What I'll say is, because of the word that you said at the very beginning, uncertainty, we know that many businesses and many families are really holding tight to see sort of how this all sorts out. And we'll just have to see how the changes in pricing in bond markets and other markets translates into different strategies moving forward. I do think the stasis that we have right now is one reason why I think it's appropriate for us to be waiting on our policy as well. And we'll just have to see how this all plays out. I'm hopeful that as we get through the summer, we start to get more clarity on exactly where things are going to settle out in trade policy and other factors.
Well, I know you've got your people working on this, but is it going to be hard, do you think? Do they tell you to separate out tariff effects from just secular movements in both sides of your mandate?
Well, I'm not sure that you can really do it so cleanly. What I would say is, when we talk to businesses, what they tell us is they've got a plan based on a projection of where things would be. Tariffs have evolved over time, and it looks like some of those levels are going to be higher, and we have to just see what they decide needs to change in those plans. Today, they're telling us that if tariffs don't get too high, that they can sustain with the level of employment that they have, and they don't necessarily will have to turn to laying people off. But they say, we don't know, and so we're going to wait and we're just going to watch. And on the inflationary side as well, all the models say that the level of inflation that we have is going to be upward, put upward pressure on prices. So we're just going to have to see what the negotiations turn out to be, and then at that point we'll have a better sense of how much we're going to have to do on our side to keep both the employment mandate and the stable prices mandate close to our targets.
Well, you said this morning you thought it would be 3 to 6 months before you get clarity. Does that mean that any kind of Fed action is going to be off the table until at least September?
Well, okay, there's an if and then a then. I would say, look, if it takes negotiations a longer time to settle things out. We have another 90 days on China, for example. That starts to push much further into the summer, in which case we won't actually know what the true effects are going to be for several months after that. If that's how it plays out, then sure, I think, and right now I would say in my SEP I have one cut only for this year, because I think this is going to take longer to resolve than it might have otherwise. But things could go faster. It could be the case that these negotiations bear a lot of fruit. We know what the numbers are, and they perhaps come in lower than people are expecting. In that case, we may be able to pull forward some of our actions because there may not be as much that we need to do in terms of managing the price level.
Well, I know it's a surprise that the president keeps changing his mind about tariffs. So what does clarity look like to you?
So for me, I would say where clarity is where businesses feel like they know what the lay of the land is, what the rules of the road are likely to be, and are making plans and moving forward based on that. You know, when I talk to a lot of folks, when I go talk to chambers of commerce and the like, I always ask the question, how many people here think that the rules we have today are the rules we're going to have a month from now? And no hands go up. That to me says we don't have clarity. What I would look for is at some point all the hands to go up, and then I know and I'll have some confidence that when they tell me what they're going to do with their workforce, when they tell me what they're going to do with their pricing, that's actually what will turn out. And at that point, then I'll have a much better sense. I can come back with my team. We can figure out exactly what we think an appropriate path to policy would be, and then we'll move forward with that.
Well, given that no hands are going up at this point, when we get an SEP from the Fed or a dot plot or your argument for one cut this year, should we take any of that seriously?
Well, you take it as seriously as you want. I say, like for most times, actually whenever I do the SEP, it's a point in time. It has a narrative about where I think the economy is going to go. If the economy goes that way, and that's exactly what we'll do. If it doesn't, then I'll pivot to something else. I think that's really the way to look at it, but also recognize that in the SEP submissions, there's a whole narrative in the back that most people don't pay attention to, which tries to describe some of the things that are embedded in the narrative. And I think those narratives will be particularly important moving forward to determine how much to take on board as to an expectation about where our policy will go.
Speaking of unemployment, the chairman put out a memo on Friday saying that the system was going to cut 10% of its workforce. How is that going to affect the Atlanta Fed, and what kind of divisions are affected?
Well, I would say we are always looking for ways to find efficiency, and when I took this job, I was committed to making sure that we use our resources in the most efficient way possible. We don't have a formal plan right now. The chair just announced this on Friday. I'm talking with my colleagues across the system. We've always been thinking about ways to do efficiencies, and we'll come up with a plan moving forward. But this is something that, look, businesses come on Bloomberg all the time and tell you that where they're going to restructure. I would look at this not as anything different than that.
Is this in any way a response to the DOGE cuts that are going through Washington?
Well, this is the chair's directive. You'll have to talk to him about that. I would say I've been having discussions about efficiencies in our bank and in the system for pretty much the whole time I've been here. And you know, I'm looking forward to the discussions to figure out how we're going to do this. I would also say, look, the 10% number is going to be moved on in a number of different ways. So our annual attrition rate is about 8%. So we're going to take our time. We want to do this in a strategic and intentional way so that we don't degrade our capabilities as we adjust our workforce level.
Another subject, the framework review. The chair said last week at the conference in Washington that the shortfall idea maybe didn't work as well as you thought. Are you assuming that that's going to go away in the new framework?
So I don't know about that. I think for me, one thing that I think would be quite positive, and the chair said this as well, is that our framework statement has to apply in a broad set of economic contexts. When we did the last one, there was a belief, I think, that was widely held that inflation was going to be lower as a baseline, and that we would be close to the effective zero bound as our steady state. And it turned out that wasn't the case. So I would look for adjustments that allow actually everybody in the public to see the framework and be able to apply it in a way that works for whatever circumstance arises.
One last question, and to steal a bit from a panel that's going to be here tomorrow. As you look at the framework, you're talking about the policy, the way you look at policy, but what about an operational change, like to demand-driven reserve levels as opposed to ample reserve, something broader for the Fed?
Well, that's going to be a much larger discussion, and I think the chair has said pretty clearly he wanted to really focus on the things we're focusing on. How are we talking about our addressing both the inflation approach and the employment approach to make sure that there was clarity on that. I expect in the years to come we'll have a lot more conversation about ample versus other types of reserve regimes to implement our policy.
Thank you very much, Raphael Bostic from the Atlanta Fed. Thanks for joining us today. Send it back to you, Carol and Tim.
All right, so appreciate it. Our Michael McKee there with the president of the Atlanta Fed, Raphael Bostic. Just to rehash some of the headlines coming out of that interview, Fed's President Bostic saying the policy is mildly restrictive. He also sees one interest rate cut this year, which mirrors some comments he made earlier today. He said that the Fed could pull forward some of its actions if negotiations pick up. The Atlanta Fed will also take its time in its staff reduction plan. This is something that Bloomberg, I believe, first reported, an internal memo, I think was seen by Reuters, but also directing the Fed Chair Jay Powell to talk about cutting back some of the Fed personnel. Which would be
Roughly 2,500 employees, according to our reporting that we came out with on Friday. We spoke to Mike on that day about this, Carol. The big picture, though, that I think narrative emerging right now is, when is the Fed going to move on the rates path? And we're hearing more and more that it's looking really that they're going to be holding rates until at least September.
Yeah, I was just looking at the, the Fed FOMC function on the Bloomberg terminal. So the next meeting is mid-June, June 18th, and you've got one on July 30th. I was curious about that 90-day pause in tariffs that the president has enacted, and that expires on July 31st of this year. And then you get into the fall or close to the fall, September 17th.
Don't forget Jackson Hole.
Yeah, we'll see. This could
be
a really...
No policy meeting in August, but Mike will put on the cowboy boots, cowboy hat, and he'll head to Jackson Hole.
But it's always good, right, in terms of tone and tenor, in terms of what we get from Fed officials about what's top of mind, where they maybe see Fed policy going. We should point out that two Fed officials now, including New York Fed Chief John Williams, have suggested policymakers may not be ready to lower interest rates before September as they kind of look at this murky economic outlook. Second, of course, being Atlanta Fed President Raphael Bostic. But multiple have kind of said and emphasized this wait-and-see approach, which is something that Molly Smith, our economics editor here at Bloomberg News, said that is kind of the narrative that we
that's kind of going to be,
officials.
Maybe it'll be the theme of the summer, Carol.
Yeah, wait and see. Wait and see. Wait and seeing. We got some earnings also coming this week. Let's not forget from the retail sector. And then you got NVIDIA next week. So just some things that are still on our calendar.
May 28th, mark it down.
Yeah.
That's NVIDIA, May 28th.
Wrapping up earnings season. As we head to wrap up this first hour of Bloomberg Business Week, S&P call it flat on the day. NASDAQ 100 too, just down about 12 points for those watching on TV. The close is coming your way. Tim and I continuing on Bloomberg Business Week.
Doznanie do głowa.
Nvidia i grønt igjen. Den går opp og ned med
I'm Cami
0,5%.
McCormick. President Trump spoke to Russia's president today about ending the war in Ukraine, but as Stacey Lynn reports, Trump appears to be leaving it up to them to continue the negotiations.
He spoke with President Putin by phone for over 2 hours, describing the call as excellent. After the talks, Putin told Russian media they were ready to continue discussing an end to the fighting, but he indicated there was no major breakthrough in what he termed a very informative and very frank conversation. He said they need to find compromises that would suit all parties. President Trump says he also spoke today with Ukrainian President Zelensky and other European leaders after he had grown frustrated with both sides over the continuing war. Stacey Lynn, CBS News, the White House.
We heard today from former President Biden after his diagnosis of aggressive prostate cancer. CBS's Natalie Brand.
Former President Biden posted on social media a picture of himself and the former
Maybe they're
First
at,
Lady, writing, "Cancer touches us
yeah.
all. Like so many of you, Jill and I have learned that we are strongest in the broken places. Thank you for lifting us up with love and support."
Israel allowed aid into Gaza today for the first time since the ceasefire collapsed. Etan Bartal of Israel's foreign ministry.
Ja, den har fått spredningskreft. Ja, det var trist.
not to support Hamas.
Only 5 trucks were allowed in. That number was 600 a day before March. VA-funded research conducted at Harvard has become a casualty of the administration's decision to cancel billions in federal grants. Christopher Cruz has that.
The VA and Harvard have been working to develop a program that helps VA emergency room doctors decide if they should hospitalize suicidal veterans. In emails reviewed by the New York Times, a VA research official says canceling the contract would result in, quote, more veteran suicides that could have been prevented. That official asked the agency's leaders to reverse their decision to cancel the contract, but an advisor to the VA secretary said the research could be done at other institutions.
There is a massive cleanup ahead after severe storms in eastern Kentucky. Tina Carnes has devoted herself to helping others. Now her home is gone after a tornado.
It's done a 180 on me. Yeah, so I need help right now. I've lost everything.
Jim Krasula has more on a wildfire in eastern Arizona.
The fire has destroyed several homes and buildings, prompted evacuations and closed major roads.
I feel sorry for the people who have to evacuate. We packed up, we're ready to go if they come and tell us to leave.
The cause of the out-of-control wildfire that started a week ago is unknown.
Checking the numbers on Wall Street, the Dow Jones Industrials currently up 93 points. This is CBS News. A survey of economists shows growing concerns about a possible recession. Here's Peter King.
The National Association of Business Economists poll shows more economists expect a summer of more layoffs and less new hiring.
It gives us a feeling of basically uncertainty of what we can expect in the next 3 months.
NABE survey analyst Lester Jones says higher costs give the illusion of higher sales income, but economists expect profit margins to go down and inflation is not abating. Jones says that all adds up to a possible recession.
40% of respondents placed a probability of a U.S. recession between 25 and 50%.
Peter King, CBS News.
Spain's government has ordered Airbnb to block more than 65,000 holiday listings on its platform. Spain says many of those listings fail to identify who the property owners are. Spain's suffering from a housing affordability crisis that spurred crackdowns on short-term rentals. I'm Cami McCormick, CBS News.
This is Bloomberg Business Week Daily, reporting from the magazine that helps global leaders stay ahead, with insight on the people, companies, and trends shaping today's complex economy, plus global business, finance, and tech news as it happens. Bloomberg Business Week Daily with Carol Masser and Tim Stenivek, live on Bloomberg Radio, television, YouTube, and Bloomberg Originals.
All right, everybody, we are just about 55 minutes away from the closing bell on this Monday. Yes, I keep thinking it's Tuesday, but folks, it's not. It is Monday, May 19th.
But next week, you will have a 4-day week.
Yeah. Not that,
Last week,
not that we're counting.
Last week, you only worked 3 days. Not that I'm counting. But
I don't
welcome
know.
back. 4-day weekend. I like it.
A kid graduating, moving her out of an apartment, doing all of that, and then taking 9 hours to get here last night.
How much
That was
packing did you have to do, or was she all packed up?
She's actually a pretty organized kid. She was really good, except there were some things. I mean,
You were
it's hard.
lucky.
Kids go
My
through-
parents have stories about me. It was not pretty.
I could just see.
It was not good.
My daughter, in some cases, would be like, "Here's what I really care about. I don't care about the other stuff." I'm like, "No, we paid for that stuff. You're going to take it with you."
Love it. That's great.
All right. More
Welcome
important
back.
stuff.
It's good to have you back.
It's good to be It's good to be back. Having said that, we're kind of watching the markets. Muted reaction when you look at the equity side of things. Watching the Treasury trade, but curious what our Michael McKenzie has to say about all of that, and with that downgrade late Friday.
Yeah, he's got his eye on the bond market and what
He does.
bond traders are doing. Also, what is up with AI at Apple?
Don't ask Siri because they're not going to have an answer.
No, it's the subject of today's big take. Mark Gurman is going to be joining us in just a few minutes.
Yeah, and speaking of AI, we've got a $61 billion company that's pitching itself as the ethical AI alternative. You're going to love this one. It's a little bit later on in the 4 o'clock hour.
All that and more coming up over the next 2 hours right here on Bloomberg Business Week Daily. First up, though, a check of the day's trade and top business stories. Here he is, Charlie Bell.
Hi, thank you very much. And here's what's going on. We got 54 minutes to go ahead of the closing bell on this Monday. The Dow higher right now, right to the numbers. Dow Industrials up 98. That is a gain of 0.2%. The S&P 500 index just about flat on the day, down by 2 points right now. Keep in mind, have been down roughly 1%. We've got Nasdaq down 26, drop there of 0.1%. 10-year at 4.46%. The 2-year 3.97%. Gold up $30 the ounce. Spot gold up 1% right now. West Texas Intermediate crude down 0.1%, 62.42 a barrel on crude. Atlanta Fed President Raphael Bostic just wrapping up that wide-ranging interview with our Michael McKee. Bostic telling us he sees one interest rate cut this year.
I do think the stasis that we have right now is one reason why I think it's appropriate for us to be waiting on our policy as well. And we'll just have to see how this all plays out. I'm hopeful that as we get through the summer, we start to get more clarity on exactly where things are going to settle out in trade policy and other factors.
Atlanta Fed President Raphael Bostic, interviewed by our Michael McKee, right here on Bloomberg Radio. Nippon Steel plans to invest $14 billion in United States Steel Corp if the Trump administration approves the merger of the companies. This, according to Reuters. ADRs of Nippon Steel, they're down 1%. U.S. Steel up by 2.3%. For on-demand news 24 hours a day, subscribe to Bloomberg News now wherever you get your podcasts. I'm Charlie Pellet. That is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
Hey, thanks for that update, Charlie. Do appreciate it. The blow landed late Friday. It was during our program, Bloomberg Business Week
Were you shocked a little
Daily.
bit?
I was shocked, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, it was late in our show. It was close to 5 o'clock. We
Yeah.
knew that, this would be a big story over the weekend and on Monday.
Yeah.
The big question is what would happen to the bond market. This we're talking about is Moody's ratings, revealing that it had run out of patience and was lowering its credit score on the world's biggest borrower below the top AAA level. Moody's cited a years-long pattern of rising debt and budget deficits, which show no sign of abating and deeply rooted political polarization. We got with us Michael McKenzie. He's Bloomberg News rates reporter. He joins us here in the Bloomberg Interactive Brokers studio. I was watching what was happening with the 30-year, where it went above 5% today.
Yep. It's come back.
It's come back, yeah.
So someone was buying it.
Yeah.
But someone bought the dip.
Yields are actually down now.
Yeah.
I'm a little confused. Can you help us out?
Well, the 30-year has been rising for quite a while now. So it's essentially back to levels that we saw in 2023. That was in the aftermath when Fitch had downgraded the US. And then, of course, it was late 2023 when Moody's put the rating on watch, and they've now followed through. So from that point of view, it's not a surprise. I think what's happening here is the bigger story is the budget reconciliation process that's currently going through Congress has unnerved a lot of bond investors. So I was already working on a story a couple of weeks ago, talking to some big investors about this. And what you were hearing from people was none of these spending cuts they're talking about are earmarked. So the bond market's going to look through that. So Moody's managed to just push yields up a little bit more. So we opened up this morning above 5% in 30s. We've come back down, but we're still at elevated levels. And really the issue you're seeing here with the Treasury market is the US this year it's going to be having to refinance or roll over about $8 trillion of debt. The budget deficit's around $2.5 trillion. And this is where Moody's has said, what Moody's told us we already knew, but what Moody's also painted is a picture that's pretty disturbing, and it's one that sort of, what the Congressional Budget Office also has been saying, if you look out 10 years, this is not going to get any better. In fact, it's going to get worse. The US is now already in a position where its interest rate, cost of servicing the interest rate costs is bigger than the defense budget. It's going to become bigger than Social Security. It's going to become the biggest element. And so you essentially say, if you look at the US economy today, about 18% of its revenues are going towards paying interest rate cost. And that's why rates being above 4% across the curve is so damaging for the US.
So, folks will say, listen, we've talked about the problem of the US deficit years ago. It was in every conversation, then it kind of seemed to go away, and we just see it getting bigger and bigger. Others will also say, hey, listen, where else are you going to go? I mean, the size of the US Treasury market, the liquidity that it offers investors. So where else are you really, really going to go? So there's that argument. So are they right, Michael? Like, I do wonder, is there some point where the deficit gets so big, it's going to be problematic for US citizens, right, who aren't going to get certain services? They're going to, maybe. Like, is there some point where it does become an issue, or are the other folks saying, where else are you going to go? So
there's an element of that, true, Carol. I mean, but I think the US is reaching it has the ability, it has the exorbitant privilege of being a reserve currency. And there are no alternatives at this point. But you're at a point now where it's going to hurt the economy more and more. And it's
because why?
Because rates will stay higher and more volatile.
Okay.
Because you're going to be rolling over all this. So the Treasury is now issuing more short-term debt.
Right.
Because they got scared in late 2023 when the bond market had a bit of a mini rebellion about them trying to increase 10-year and 30-year issuance. But that means if you're issuing more short-dated debt, you're getting to a point where you're rolling over more on the front end of the curve. That could potentially unnerve investors at some point. So really, the US has got to get some fiscal discipline. The problem is, of course, it's very politicized. And both sides of Congress like spending money and have been able to borrow. And that's what also Moody's pointed out. It's successive administrations. This is a bipartisan problem, and it requires bipartisan solutions.
We've heard about bond vigilantes coming in, and the specter of them has been there for years. We always hear the James Carville quotation about being as powerful as the bond market. Yeah, reincarnated. That's what he wants to be. But we haven't seen them emerge this time around.
We've seen flickers of it. We saw it in April when the tariffs. I think the other problem with this administration at the moment.
That's when the bond market got a little yippy.
Yeah, because the dollar's been weakening. And so you're seeing foreign investors who've made a lot of money over the last 10 years owning US assets, equities, credit, and also treasuries, have been rebalancing. The problem with this, of course, is if this rebalancing continues to become something bigger, I do think when you do talk to a lot of bond investors, they don't like the 30-year part of the curve. It's just too much duration, and ultimately you're going to have a steeper yield curve as a result.
I mean, we've seen the dollar come way down, right? If I look at just even the dollar index.
They began the year very, very richly valued, as did US equities. So you can make an argument if you're sitting offshore and you've had a really good run investing in US assets for the past decade, you should be rebalancing. It's probably time to rotate into other markets. So it could be just a rebalancing. But if you look at the numbers, the US debt numbers, the debt servicing costs, this is alarming. And I don't think anyone in Washington really, they just don't seem to be that concerned. So it's going to require a bond market vigilantism, flexing of the muscle, to kind of snap everyone's attention.
I love that you went there because I keep trying to make sense out of stuff that was at Milken this year of a lot of really smart investment professionals managing trillions of dollars saying, hey, listen, it's a rebalancing when you see investors start to look at Europe and elsewhere because they became overexposed to the U.S. market. And that's what's going on. I'm trying to make sense of, is that what's going on or is it also some concern over the U.S. fiscal position, the U.S. economic position going forward, and whether or not it's going to be different, and so you don't want to have as much exposure to the U.S. or maybe it's a little bit of both.
I think it's a question of both. It's also a question of this administration with its tariff and trying to rework the global trading system. That's a big problem too for investor sentiment. That's really unnerved people. And again, you've got a weaker dollar when rates are going higher in the U.S. That's kind of strange, and that's a signal that people are shedding U.S. dollar assets.
I want to ask you, forgive me, I'm going to jump in.
Yeah, okay, I know.
Why should Americans care about a high U.S. fiscal deficit? Why should they care about higher rates
I'll give you one.
along the curve?
It means that tough spending choices are coming down the pipe, and it's going to be entitlements. And that's going to affect all Americans who are currently putting away money in Social Security down the road. The other factor here is that the most important interest rate for Americans generally is that 30-year fixed mortgage rate. That is now currently at a very high level. Mm-hmm. And that is directly influenced by the 10-year Treasury yield, because most mortgages in America typically get refinanced on a 10-year basis. If the 10-year yield remains in that 4.5% to 5% range, possibly even higher, you're not going to get a refinancing of your home loan anytime soon. More importantly, as people like Jeffrey Gundlach have pointed out, if we do go into another recession at some point, and you can never rule that out, then the budget deficit is going to get even worse because tax revenues will decline and spending will go up because many people will be filing for unemployment insurance and things like that. Which means he argues that you could actually see 10-year go even higher because the deficit will get worse. So instead of coming down like they normally do in a recession, the long end of the curve won't. And if that 10-year remains stuck, you're not going to get that big, juicy refinancing of home loan that you normally get when you get a recession. So it does matter. It's really important. And unfortunately, one of the people I spoke to with the story said, most Americans don't probably understand or realize that the interest rate cost is now exceeding the defense budget.
Yeah.
They should.
All of that. If you missed any of it, go back and check out our podcast because that's kind of why you should care. Not even kind of, it's why you should care.
And listen to, also read Michael McKenzie's story. It's on the Bloomberg Terminal and also at Bloomberg.com. Michael McKenzie, he's Bloomberg News rates reporter. He joined us here in the studio. Up next, it's today's big take. It's one of the most read stories on the Bloomberg Terminal about Apple has gotten it so wrong with AI. Mark Gurman, next.
Ser det ikke ut som at Nasdaq skal bryte det jævla trendlinja. En liten shorting. Så vidt det blir så.
Tar mot hver.
Ja. President Trump og First Lady gjør et eller annet.
President Trump and the First Lady participate in the bill signing. Jeg vet ikke hva den bill signingen er for. Er det live, eller?
Ja.
Han er live hver dag, han styrer det showet som om det er såpeopera. Han er live hver dag.
Ja, live.
Det virker som algoritmebottene bare... Hver gang han viser trynet sitt, så popper opp, liksom.
Ja.
Er du ikke enig?
Positivt når han kommer på til markedet.
Ja, jeg vet ikke. Det er rart. Det bør egentlig falle til helvete i dag. Det har blitt nedgradert, for faen.
Ja, men jeg har ikke følt meg på det. Altså, det blir gå sånn.
Han snur her hele tiden. På 80, mellom 75 og 80.
Jeg har stoppet så godt som break-even i stedet på shorten.
It's 3:21 on Wall Street. We do check markets all day long here.
Så lenge
We
vi
got
ikke
39
faller,
minutes
så
to go
faller
ahead of
det
the
der.
closing bell. The Dow higher, S&P, NASDAQ, they are both lower right now. S&P down 8, drop there of 0.1%. We've got NASDAQ down 46, decline there of 0.2%. But the Dow holding on to a gain of 0.1% right now, up 57. 10-year yield at 4.45% with the 2-year 3.96%. Gold up $30 the ounce, up by about 1%. West Texas Intermediate crude 62.46 a barrel. Little change right now, down under 0.1%. And this Bloomberg Business Flash is brought to you by ShipStation. Calm the chaos with the shipping software that delivers. Use code Bloomberg for a free trial at ShipStation.com. That's ShipStation.com with the code Bloomberg. JP Morgan Chase CEO Jamie Dimon is warning against complacency, citing risks such as inflation, credit spreads, and geopolitics.
I never believed we were as exceptional as people were saying. I never believed that Europe was as bad as people were saying. America's asset price, I still think they're kind of high. I'd put that in the risk category too. And credit spreads are kind of low. I'd put that in the risk category too. I think both of those things may change.
And speaking of JP Morgan,
Har du redan en jävla uppehåll?
he also said that he expects investment banking fees to fall, but markets revenue to rise amid market volatility and uncertainty around trade policy and tariffs. Again, recapping, S&P now lower by 6, down by about 0.1%. And
Hallå?
tech names, Apple shares right now down 1.4%. I'm
Hör ni mig bättre?
Bloomberg Business.
Hey, thanks so much for that update, Charlie. Do appreciate it. It is today's big take. It's one of the most read stories on the Bloomberg terminal. It features exclusive interviews with Apple insiders about how Apple has been falling short when it comes to cracking AI. Here's how one senior member of Apple's AI team put it to RT. This is a crisis. Yes, that is a quote. Mark Gurman is Bloomberg News managing editor for Global Consumer Tech. He joins us here in the Bloomberg Interactive studio. Mark, I'm struck by this, just at the beginning of your piece, there's a picture of Phil Schiller introducing Siri back in 2011, and there are these thought bubbles.
Ja, men det gick lite
proff. What's the weather like today? Do I need an umbrella today? I was shocked to look at the small print and see that was from 2011. Because in my view, that's kind of what Siri still does.
Yeah. Siri.
That's the problem.
That is a problem. Siri was revolutionary 15 years ago. It was amazing for its first couple of years because let's see, how do I want to say this? It wasn't great, but it was still amazing and futuristic and sci-fi and better than everything else. Then Amazon came around, Google came around, Microsoft came around, and they just blew Apple out. The technology is just all legacy technology that they've been using for a long while now. For all intents and purposes, we're not talking about a Siri that's based on the same large language models and foundation model technology that you're seeing from OpenAI, Gemini from Google, and Anthropic, you name it. And so yeah, they have fallen way to the
En short
Well,
der.
speaking of Google, there was a big hire there from 2018 who was supposed to be the
Yeah, short
guy
der.
who did AI at Apple.
Avbryt
He was
kanskje ned,
supposed to be
da.
the guy who did AI at Apple, and he's still the guy who does
Jeg
AI
tar en
at
kjapp
Apple.
liten gevinst.
It's John
Jeg stoler ikke på en
Ginnendale.
dritt her nå. Nvidia som droppa
This
litt.
was
Den
generative
024.
AI. They seem to have not
Tar
seen
imot
it
her
coming,
der.
and if they did see it coming, they did little to
Akkurat her
nothing
tar
about
den
it.
imot.
They really, I'm told, started on the generative AI path after Craig Federighi, the head of software engineering, used ChatGPT to finish some code for a personal project he was working on over the holiday break. They take this little 1 week break
Oh,
at
and-
the end of December. He was working
Bryter jo den forrige loven der, så er vi good to go, altså.
and he figured out the
Men
power.
jeg ramler
Yeah,
ut
figured
av
out
helvete nå.
the power of
Det var
ChatGPT,
bounce
and
opp og
then
ned.
immediately they set iOS 18 for
Ja.
2024. This is going to be the big AI release for Apple.
Tar
From a
imot
marketing
hele tiden.
standpoint, it was. They marketed it really well. AI for the rest
Ja, han
of
er
us.
live der
just
ved
like
dag 2.
the computer for the rest of us 40 years
Altså,
ago.
sånn in all fairness,
And,
bør stenge til helvete ned nå.
Okay.
We're good. Drop a little water.
Tim almost
Other
dropped.
When is
than-
AI going to fix that?
Yes, other than the marketing. You know what, let's take a step back. In the robotics world, in the humanoid robotics world, the
Ja, men det er sånn
fundamental
at vi
thing
går
that
under den linja,
humanoid
stenger
robots
under den
do,
linja med,
go
sånn,
to your
altså,
kitchen, pick
altså
up a
at vi
glass
skal
of
gå
water, bring
ned,
it to you
fortsatt
without
videre
dropping
ned.
it, okay? Tim almost dropped his water all over him, so that's where I got
Bare
the
var
idea to
opp for å,
The problem
Thanks, Mark.
isn't so much the
for
iPhone and the AI
å ta
capabilities
ut
of today's
likviditet
devices.
oppi
The
hugget
problem
der.
is can Apple make AI that's good enough to power a robot that's not going to spill their water like Tim, right?
There it is.
And so the worry is
Han
not
går
necessarily
under nå,
about the
så
technology
kanskje
today,
vi
but it's
dropper
the
litt.
technology of tomorrow and a decade from now.
Vi
And
ramler
so
ordentlig.
the iPhone, you know, its reign is going to be over at some point, but that's not really what matters here. I think that's not big picture enough. The big picture is the next set of stuff. We've seen AI already lead
Ja, det
to
stopper
color
forrige,
cancellation
over
of art
forrige
Å, kan
halvår.
but
Der,
Apple was
ja.
able to get an L5 car with tip-top AI and
There we
safety
go.
features.
Level
They-
5 is
Ja,
what
eller penger om det er så
Yeah, they would have
lite
brought
at
it to
det var ikke
market.
sånn kjempedrått at det må
yeah,
falle
we've already
ned.
seen AI cost them one big category. They were supposed to have a big smart home push this year.
Det var et
It's been
kjempedropp.
delayed. It was supposed to happen in March. Now it probably won't happen until the end of this year or
Nei,
next
det var
year.
ikke store, men det var
AI
noe.
not working.
Jeg traff rett i, jeg traff akkurat på linja mi,
They're already
faktisk.
having trouble
Jævelen.
coming up with use cases for AirPods and watches with camera and smart glasses with cameras because you need real good AI to use that.
Fy faen.
So the iPhone doesn't matter. It's everything that comes after it.
Det er frekt.
Why can't they get this right?
Rett og
Is
slett
it
frekt.
personnel? Is it culture?
Så
Is
se
it
da om det
what
faller
is it?
videre.
Both. It's personnel,
Bør
it's
gjøre det.
management, it's culture. Apple's wired in a very specific way. I get into it in the story. They're wired
you do.
to they
Ja,
sit
boom,
down,
ja.
they map out what they want to do, and then they make the investment to get there. AI sort of works the opposite. You don't know
Men
exactly
det gjør
where
jo
you're
ikke.
going to
Det går jo opp
land.
igjen.
It's a little bit messier. You have to run a little bit faster. It's a little bit, you know, more expensive to
Ja, det er
pull
masse
off.
penger, og
So
det går
it's
ikke
just
av.
a philosophical product development question, right? And so Apple has to change. AI moves so fast. You know, there's a new AI provider or a major new AI technology on a weekly basis at this point, even more frequently.
Nå sa
But
dere,
Apple's
den
wired
grønne
to release
funker.
one major software upgrade every year and a smaller
Jeg skulle
software
gjøre det i går, men
upgrade
du sa den
every spring.
funka.
So they're going to need to move away from that idea as well if they really want to stay at pace with the rest of the technology industry.
Kødder du?
So AI and Apple, it's just so interesting. It's like putting two magnets next to each other, they're just going to push away, right? And so Apple's going to have to change at a very core level to really be able to make meaningful change and to have a meaningful improvement in their Gen AI world.
You know, I'm thinking about this. And there, Mark, when you talk about Apple, and you know this better than anyone else, people, a common refrain, and I don't think this is true, but it's that
Nei, men da må vi
Apple
ha
stopped innovating after Steve Jobs. And you can go
Vi
and
må gjøre det på
look
en side som
at
passer.
Apple's share price and what has happened with investors and
No,
the way that Tim Cook has led the company.
Han
The
har
concern
aldri
that I
begynner
potentially would have in a situation like this as an observer is this Tim Cook's legacy here? Missing AI.
Hvis det ikke går, så går det ikke.
I don't agree with
Hey.
the idea that Apple stopped
Oh,
innovating
I'm
after Steve
helvete
Jobs.
I agree with that.
Kan du bare se om det går?
No, I know you agree. If you think about it, they basically
Helt
Ah.
Du er så
created
Du
or
skal ha
done something
walking-prosess.
wholly
Du
new
skal ikke ha
since the
en
iPhone.
se bak
Raume, han er aktiv.
Du skjønte ikke hva han mente, da?
I think
på andre siden av veggen.
yes,
motsatt
to
side.
some extent, but like you look
Inne
at
på
it
rommet.
and like the
Ja, motsatt
iPad
På den siden istedenfor den siden?
to the iPhone was like the Vision Pro to the iPhone, right? They're both different reincarnations of that
Do we have
same
fun?
operating system. You put the Apple Watch in that category as well. So you have sort of the central product, the iPhone, and you just kept building and building around it and building it up into new form factors. And they haven't really done an entirely new product experience from the ground up. And so, you know, at some point they'll get there. But right now it's about new form factors, and honestly,
Jeg begynner å
I'm
bli
not sure
imponert på meg selv har
I'm
samlet
not sure
det her.
anyone
Det er
done
bra,
a
det
better
er
job than Tim Cook over the last
Nice.
15 years or so since Steve Jobs passed away. So,
Ikke legg en nyhetsdrame, vente litt. Jeg tar det veldig rolig enda. Ikke gjør noen ting, bare vent.
Ja, du har jo tradet litt I dag.
Ja, jeg har tjent penger I dag, men det ikke bra nok til at jeg, sånn som jeg holder på da. Jeg får ikke gjort så mye. Jeg har gjort litt I dag. Det ikke sånn, det ikke sånn som jeg pleier å gjøre.
Nei.
Jeg må ha markedet normalt, det her ikke normalt.
Ja, da skal du vente lenge.
Ja, men faen Du kan ikke fortsette sånn at det med så lite volum. Det de sier da, de sier nå at det kan være så ræva volum frem til tariffen med Kina blir oppdatert. Det det de sier. 45 dager til.
Nå jo markedet normalt, sånn som det har vært hele tiden.
Hva da nå?
Ja.
Nei, det ikke noe volum da. Det jo ingenting.
Nei, akkurat det sånn det vært når Biden var.
Det ikke så ræva sånn her. Jeg tredet som faen, jeg. For 3-4 uker siden. Skalpa alle veier.
Ja, 3-4 uker siden så var det jo helt vilt.
Ja, det sånn jeg elsker det.
Ja, det ikke normalt.
Jeg gjør det bra når jeg
3000 poeng på en dag, liksom.
Jeg gjør det bra når jeg kaos. Pju, 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 pju. Det er et trauste malingskvelpe her. Han sier det over kaos når jeg tredje, men det der jeg gjør det bra.
But they hired
Ja,
this
det
guy.
You even printed it out. I love it.
Of course I do. Are you kidding? But they hired this guy back in 2018.
Yes.
Har du fått med bestillinger da, Stig?
Not quite, but getting
Jeg har fått et par. Jævla mummikopp-stabler, de populære.
Hva for noe?
Mummikopp-stabler, da.
Hva faen det som kjøper det?
Veldig populært med mumigreier, altså.
Han sa
Ja,
det. Har du hørt om det?
Det jo for å stable sånne mummikopper oppgår, tenker jeg.
Det til barn, eller?
Nei, det er voksne folk som driver og stabler, samler på de mummikoppene. En sånn jævla mummikopp koster jo 19 000 kroner.
Hæ? En jævla mummikopp?
They've already stripped him of all product.
Ja, det var en av de koppene som gjør det.
Siri from him. They removed robotics from him.
Det
Det er sånn spesial kopp.
Some more things
Nå
from
har
him.
jeg kostet 19 000 i hvert fall.
Down to a role that's entirely focused on large language models.
Men folk samler på dem.
AI technology research.
Ja, det hadde jeg aldri trodd.
And so
Mumitrollene, liksom?
taking away 75%
Ja, mummi populært, det.
You know, you made
Ekstremt
that
populært.
writings on the wall, it's time to get out of here. I don't think it's going to happen imminently. I don't think he wants it to happen, but I think at some point a change will be made, whether it's because he decided or because Apple forced his hand. But I don't expect them to fire him. Apple doesn't do that for senior executives of that level unless you really do something bad. And for all intents and purposes, JG's a great guy. He's very well liked. He's very respected in the machine learning and AI communities.
Can he get them to where they need to be?
He can be a piece of that
Hva
puzzle.
gjør du?
Don't forget,
Vil du
Apple
søppelhjenta?
is constructed
Pisen på søppel, da?
by a functional
Pisen
model.
på
So you have
søppel?
design teams, you have hardware engineering teams, you have
Søppelhjenta?
software engineering teams that bring together the
Søppelhjenta
product at the
mi.
end of the day. If you dilute JG to only focus on AI research,
Høres ut som du snakker til den minste ungen min.
AI product
Vi behandler den som
I
barn.
think it's possible that that's a winning formula, but clearly him
Men jeg
running
skal
all of
søppel.
AI was not a good fit.
We only have 30 seconds left. Could
It's
Apple
all in film.
acquire its way out of this? They've partnered with ChatGPT,
They can,
OpenAI.
well, first of all, yes, they need to acquire as much AI talent as possible. But that's also another cultural issue where they have...
Altså, nå Nasdaq ned for dagen, da. Men altså, hadde du... Det ser ikke ut som noen som har blitt nedgradert I dag, altså. Der det sjukeste.
The Intel modem acquisition for $1 billion in 2019.
Du kan ikke se at USA er nedgradert I dag. Sist, nei, det ikke. Men sist gang det ramlet, så ramlet det på den samme nedgraderingen. Ramlet det 6,7%.
Er det ikke all time high?
Nei, ikke det var på 23 000.
It's Apple. They've got the brand, they've got the button. They've got it all.
Gotta say, I was in the car, I was doing a lot of things over the weekend, talking to Siri. I'm like, You're not bringing it.
Jeg har et lite stykke til hos meg.
First thing for Siri for me, I'll keep this real quick, is that I like go to sushi restaurants. I'll say a sushi.
Jeg er 23, jeg har ikke ordet på
Siri
det.
asks how to get
Det er det verste Mission Conference forrige uke.
Why did you take me somewhere 6,000
Nest verste siden noensinne. Det også sier jo litt da.
Han skal jo opp igjen da.
Ja, ta mot deg hele tida. Takk en video. Det er en video som styrer den fuckings indeksen her, ass. Max 7. Magnificent 7. De burde egentlig vært på en egen børs.
Ja, for da hadde ikke børsen vært i dag.
Nei, jeg tror faktisk børsen hadde vært mye mer. Jeg tror folk hadde tørt å handle om det. For det er så mange nå som har tatt så mye penger på Russell 2000. Russell 2000 var ramlet til helvete med 50%. Masse selskapene er jo forduftet. For det som er litt med aksjer, ikke sant? Jeg skal lære litt sånn funn da. Det som er med aksjer, at aksjer skal være et sted hvor du skal kjøpe for å tjene penger, ikke på grunn av noen trender eller noe sånt. Du kan gjerne trade på det, men skal du kjøpe en aksje, skal du kjøpe for at du skal tjene penger. Og når en indeks bare går oppover, og ting er pisshøyt priset, og så har du masse mindre selskaper som ikke tjener penger, når da de her oppe plutselig begynner å bli dyre, så raser hele indeksen, og så raser de som ikke tjener penger til helvete. Så du får sånn der skifte som er helt kaos. Så de her nede, ingen tør å handle de aksjene, for de er redd for at de her oppe skal falle. Så når de her begynner å falle, så faller alt her nede også, og så blir det sånn boom, boom. Og så sitter du der buttfucked. Og det er problemet med Russell 2000 nå. Masse av de er jo pissbillig, men du tør ikke, ingen som vil kjøpe det. For de er redd for en korreksjon i de 7 store. Og nå har jo Meta levert ganske bra. Apple leverte ikke så jævla bra, pluss guidingen var helt ræva. Nvidia kommer nå om litt over en uke. Amazon var jo ikke noe bra. Eller var det Alphabet? Jeg tror det var Amazon. Amazon ble trua av Trump. Ja, fy faen var fennes. Du hørte det? Trump ringte Bezos. Ja, faen var fennes. Det var sjukeste jeg har hørt i mitt liv.
Så jeg stoler på meg?
Stol på deg, den bikkja her liker meg ikke. Beit meg litt og blød snart. Jævla idiot. Jeg har aldri bitt noen hund for da.
Har du?
Ja, men Arko var litt annerledes da, for han var en valp. Det der er en voksen hund.
Nei, den er en baby.
Hvor gammel er hun? Det var 3 år. Det var ikke babyen av 3 år.
Kom her. Ja. Jeg hoppet på foten min, det var ikke stor der inne.
The Senate is probably not going to finish its crypto bill and stablecoin this week. Nei, sier du det, du?
Nei, slutt. Slutt. Sitt. Jenta, slutt. Slutt med det der bordet ditt. Slutt med bordet ditt.
Fy faen, hvor kjedelig det var. Nå åpnet så bra i dag. Så blir det bare verre og verre. Kjedelig og kjedelig.
Jeg trodde det skulle være fest i dag.
Ja, så trodde jeg. Tenkte, yes, endelig. Nå blir det Ragnarok. Men nei da. Hva skal Trump ordne fredsavtale med Russland? Klarte han det da? Nei, det klarte han ikke.
Jesus. Faen, hva skal det?
Hva var det for noe?
Nei, jeg glemte at jeg hadde lyd på jeg satt på Instagram Reels.
3:40 on Wall Street. We do check markets all day long here at Bloomberg. We've got 20 minutes to go ahead of the closing bell with the Dow.
Jeg mistet kontoen min med 400,000 følgere.
Right now, let's head right over to the first word breaking news desk for today's afternoon call. Here he is.
Ikke så lite meldinger fra
Hey, good afternoon, Charlie. U.S. stocks are quiet right now, overcoming a weak start after Moody's downgraded the U.S. Friday. Dow was down 317 points, is now higher by 80. S&P is still down 6, and Nasdaq is lower by 40. The U.S. 10-year yield is at 4.46%. Gold is in the green. Oil is little change, but Bitcoin, that's higher by 0.5%. Leaders to the upside now, UNH and Merck, well, Nike fell 1.8% and led to the day.
Ja, Insta-grupper, Dr. Botox og Fischl med ett tall på slutten. Jeg ble presset for penger.
Trump said that Russia and Ukraine will start ceasefire talks immediately among the financial.
Det er sant, jeg ble presset for penger for å få tilbake kontoen min, som måtte betale sånn copyrighted shit. Og det er ikke sikkert jeg hadde ikke fått den tilbake.
De sa også det blir søksmål hvis du ikke betaler.
From the first breaking news desk, I'm Bill Maloney. Charlie.
Okay, we thank you very much, Bill Maloney, to hear live breaking news over your Bloomberg. Type SQUAWK, S-Q-U-A on your Bloomberg channel. I'm Charlie Ellis. That is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
How about you let me drive?
Oh, no. This is not a toy. Who's gonna drive you home? Honey, please, I'll do the driving. Drive on. Excuse me, I want to drive.
It's the question that drives us.
Hvor skal han da?
Stig, det kommer helt an på hva Trump skal tweete snart.
Trumperen. Sist var ned, skal vi ikke?
Hvis du ser på rentene, så skal vi ned. Hvis du ser på gullet, så skal vi ned. Hvis du ser på nedgraderinga, så skal vi ned. Ser du på guiding fra Walmart før de er ute, så skal vi ned. Ser du på guiding fra Amazon, så skal vi ned. Ser du på Consumer Confidence, så skal vi ned. Ser vi på Michigan Confidence, så skal vi ned. Men vi går ikke ned.
Jeg kan til å short på bunnen eller noe.
Hva sa du for noe?
Jeg klarer vel sikkert å short på bunnen her nå, sier jeg.
Du skal shorte med breakouten?
Jeg gikk short i stad, ja, men den gikk litt ned nå.
Ja, du er minus 10 poeng, ikke sant? 11 nå?
Nei, pluss.
Da var jo ikke det bunnen av den pølse.
Jeg var så shortet for 2 sekunder, ja. For candlesticks der. Jeg shortet på bunnen av det.
Ja, men er du heldig nå, så dropper den litt da. For nå faller Nvidia, og Amazon har gått i rødt plutselig. Amazon går videre ned, Nvidia faller, Microsoft ramler plutselig, Tesla ramler her. Nå ramler alt her plutselig. Får vi se da om hvor mye det faller. Det er ikke mye da, det er liksom sånn 20 poeng, det er jo ikke en dritt. Men det er en start da. Fy faen, hadde jobbet som megler nå, så hadde ringt alle kundene våre, så bare krise, Moody's nedgraderte hele USA, se til helvete, kjøp gull, ut av alt av aksjer. Få det vekk med det, det blir nedgradert. Bankene kommer til oss å slite med å gjøre belåning, få det vekk. Det hadde gjort noe. Det hadde ikke funket, for å si det sånn.
Nei, da hadde han tatt penger.
Ja.
Ja, så skal den gå rett opp igjen, eller?
Ikke vær nervøs av Stig. Du vet hvordan dette er. Det er bare dritt.
Men det er så typisk. Ja, kanskje ikke å sitte med den.
Ja, har du så mange?
Nei, jeg har ikke så mange her nå.
Hvor mange har du?
5. Ja, det var 50.
5, det tåler du. Du handlet jo med 50 her forleden.
Ja. Ja, så 50.
Har du 50 nå?
Ja.
Men det... 50.
55? Og da skjønner jeg at du reagerer litt.
Så jeg orker ikke å sitte så veldig lenge. Altså feil vei i hvert fall. Jeg flytter stoppen min i break-even ganske kjapt. I hvert fall når jeg usikker.
En pip 5000 da?
Hadde jeg suttet nå, så hadde jeg jo hatt $1000 minus.
På 50 kontrakter?
Det 50 kontrakter, så en pip 5000 kroner.
Eller 500?
Nei, det 5000. Ikke 5000 hos deg? Nei.
På 100 poeng, ja.
Ja, på 100 poeng, ja. Det 500 kroner.
Per?
Tikk.
Det heftig da.
Jeg hadde jo 70 når jeg var i Kypros.
Du hadde 20 på en og 10 på den andre.
Vi får Therese som en gærning.
Artig da. Kjenner at pumpa lever litt.
Ja, det funker når ting funker, da funker det.
Ja, det går til helvete. Når det går til helvete, så går det til helvete.
Ja, det går skikkelig til helvete. Det var det som morsomt.
Ja. Og derfor har jeg sittet med stopplåsen min tight.
Vi får glede oss til fall det kommer. Jeg gitt opp. Det kommer ikke noe jævla fall her så lenge Donald Trump som president, ser det ut som. For han Bessett så bra på å prate, vet du. Alle lytter til. Det som Trump sier, når Bessett prater, så lytter alle. Det det som skjer. Han forklarte at de tallene fra Moody's, det gamle tall, så de på etterskudd.
Er det frykt i markedet, så går det jo opp.
For da folk short, og så går de med hedge seg, ikke sant?
Riktig.
Det kan man ikke gjøre før, for da handler det fysiske aksjer. Så basically så øler det CFT-dritene litt da, og ETF-ene øler ganske mye da.
En grunn til at USA har bannet det.
For det rører hele markedet, men de har ikke bannet ETF-er. ETF-er lov.
ETF noe helt annet, men CFD så det jo ikke markedet.
Jo, men ETF-ene jo syntetisk, det bare flere samlet i en sånn pott.
Ja, men en ETF det jo som et litt sånn...
Fond?
Ja, fond. Så da har du jo likviditeten der. Men CFD på aksjer og sånt, så hadde alle sammen handlet CFD, altså alle sammen handlet CFD, så hadde ikke markedet lurt på seg helt tatt.
Det hadde nok skjedd en dritt.
Nei. Så derfor så har USA bannet det. Så de redd at markedet skal stoppe opp.
Nå gikk det stoppet.
Hvem det?
Ja.
Ja, jeg gikk pluss i sted. Stopper du pluss.
Nvidia løftet seg med 0,9 poeng. Nvidia fortsatt...
Sa det jo meg.
Hæ?
Nei. Berg lurte på hvorfor det var ulovlig med CFD i USA. Vi snakket jo nettopp om det. Interten fikk det med seg.
Står ikke det her på chatten?
Nei, han slettet det. Det jeg som leser fort, sikkert.
Nå gikk Nvidia grønt. Nå gikk den i rødt igjen. Hver dag på close jumper.
Ja, ok, bare. Ja, og jeg reknet nesten med noe sånt. Ja, det hoppet jo bra, det da.
Ja, du gjør det hver dag på close, og så etter close og dette.
Ja, det var 21,50 candle.
Da er vi tilbake til samme mønster som de andre dagene. Vi går opp på close, og så stenger, og så faller vi.
Viksen er på 18,12.
Løftet seg litt da, fra 7. Men fortsatt ikke høy.
Nei.
Nå gikk Amazon i grønt, Alphabet gikk i grønt. Det er ikke en video i rødt den her nå.
Bitcoin er på 105 000. 550.
Peak, alt peaker.
Martin var helt på til.
Dette er den mest skuffende dagen på lenge, ass. Åpner ned 400 poeng, og så stenger vi faen meg 0. Det er det drøyeste jeg har sett i hele mitt liv.
Ja.
Må droppe en video faktisk litt her.
Markedet droppa også, men jeg klarer ikke å sitte og korrelere de toene der.
Dow Jones gikk rett opp her.
Dow Jones?
Dr. Jones.
Oi, det er så syke bevegelser, altså.
This is Bloomberg Business Week Daily with Carol Massar and Tim Stenovec on Bloomberg Radio.
It is Bloomberg Business Week Daily. That is Carol Massar. I'm Tim Stenovec.
Trying to get my different earbuds.
Is it working?
In place. Oh, this one's
How are you doing?
It's got a knot in it.
Are you okay?
I'm gonna have to live with it. Sorry,
Okay,
guys.
that's
there might
okay.
be some wires showing. Hey, sausage being made.
Can we talk a little bit about the stock buyers waiting back in to fuel this bounce from lows? This is the market's wrap.
De snakker om markedet at det er rart at det går opp, og hører man sier.
60 minutes, a renewed wave of dip buying has fueled a rebound in stocks from session lows. Traders are looking past that U.S. downgrade by Moody's ratings that earlier sent bond yields jumping.
I don't know how I feel about this rally.
Why?
I don't know. I don't know. I know we've bounced back a lot, so we're kind of where we were before we started. But, you know, it was funny. I always think about people saying you can't time the market, but at one point we were up about 10%. Right ahead of the election and going into the election, not the election, going ahead of the inauguration. So
were you saying that was
kind of a nice? I would have taken that, right? After 2
years,
you
would have sold.
Yeah, and said, you know what, I'm done for the year. Just saying.
Easy for you to say in hindsight.
Right now.
Call up John Authors with Hindsight Capital Management because
right now we're a little changed.
Yeah, we are a little changed on the year. And would you have plowed money back in on April 8th?
Great question.
You know what we should do?
I do believe in buying when things are beaten up.
We should have like one of those fantasy stock trading things between us.
Oh my God, we should do that.
Let's do that.
What's wrong with that?
Because you're super competitive. So, and you always say,
says the super competitive.
and you always say timing the market isn't that hard.
Do quizzes. It's like,
so let's put our money where our mouth is.
We should try that and play around. You know, Peter Lynch, I used to remember years ago.
Talk about quitting while you're ahead.
Early in my career. And
a legend for that.
He used to work with students and like local schools, near Fidelity. And what was interesting is what he loved about kids is he said they'd buy things that they understood, like this kind of concept. I think Warren Buffett did some things like that. Like I need to understand the business, but playing around with kids who just kind of had a very clear vision of why they would buy it, and I think would tend to do well. And sometimes it would be fun to just play around with like a fantasy portfolio.
Yeah, let's do it.
Right?
Yeah, we'll figure out a way.
Okay, we'll figure it out.
In the meantime,
anyway, go ahead.
A New York City story that's getting my attention. Wynn has ditched a New York City casino plan. Wynn Resorts
Really?
dropping out its pursuit in a casino license with related companies in New York. They cited a rezoning process and local opposition that makes the opportunity less attractive.
This is what people say about some of the major cities, right? You hear that with San Francisco and real estate, right? So all of the regulations and things of trying to do things.
I think this is a different animal just because it's a casino.
Fair.
And there are sort of
Totally,
unique challenges when it comes to community pushback, but no question. I just read, and I think maybe we'll get them on the program, Abundance by Derek Thompson and Ezra Klein. And a big part of that lack of housing, especially in expensive cities that have been run by Democrats for years, they argue has to do with local opposition and pushback.
It's funny. My husband and I were actually talking about like the casinos coming to New York, and I have mixed feelings about. I mean, I know this is what a lot of major cities do, and maybe it's another thing for when people come to visit New York. I don't know how I personally feel about it.
Yeah, I don't know either.
I don't know. I guess I feel like
I grew up in a town in California where there was a casino.
Was there?
But it's on Native American land.
Okay.
So that's kind of how it was when I was growing up. I feel like New York City just has everything already.
Yeah. Oh, what's interesting, the companies, I guess, looking to do this faced opposition from local groups, including the Friends of the High Line, the elevated promenade, among the complaints, the casino tower would interfere with... listen, that's legit in my view.
Hey, other competitors are forging ahead. The Solviev Group are sought to sweeten its pitch with a way for New York City residents to take a stake in the facility. And then last month, Steve Collins planned to build an $8 billion casino and entertainment complex in Queens next to Citi Field gained a key vote in Albany. So it'll happen.
That kind of makes sense to me. You're out there, there's still stuff going on, there's Citi Field, right? There's just a lot of things.
And he owns the Mets.
And he owns the Mets. So maybe like you go see a game, or I don't know, you can make it kind of more of an entertainment complex or something of that sort of thing. I'm just not a gambler. Maybe that's just my own problem. My name is Carol Masser, and I don't know that I like
She
gambling.
knows what she says. She knows how to time the market, but she's not a gambler.
I don't know that, but I find it funny when people say you can't time the market. I'm like, there is a point where you can say, that's a great gain for a year. And just...
But then what if you leave money on the table?
Oh, stop. Stop.
I imagine that's what they...
What if you don't lose a lot of money that goes elsewhere? Anyway, do not go anywhere. We're heading over to our TV colleagues. The gang is back. The closing bell starts right now.
All of today's price actions starts right now with our global simulcast.
The Closing Bell, Bloomberg's comprehensive cross-platform coverage of the U.S. market close, starts right now.
And right now we are 2 minutes away from the end of the trading day. Romaine Bostic here with Alex Steele, taking you through to that closing bell. It's a global simulcast, and it starts right now. Scarlett Fu in the TV studio, Carol Masser and Tim Stenovic together, believe it or not, in the radio booth. All five of us back together here on this Monday afternoon as we welcome our audiences across all of our platforms, including, Carol, our partnership with YouTube.
Yeah, we are across all the platforms. We are everywhere. I kind of find it fascinating that I guess investors are like, yeah, another downgrade. Okay, you know, we kind of maybe thought it was coming, not surprising. And investors, certainly the equity side of things, seem okay with it.
Yeah, I mean, it also seemed to be okay with it on the bond market. You saw some buying on the long end, on the 30-year, when there was concern that, you know, it had gone above 5%. I don't know, maybe everyone's desensitized. I don't know what the answer is.
I think that's a good part of it. I mean, 5.03% on the 30-year earlier today, but you just look at the reactions in the past. In August 2011, when S&P downgraded the U.S., The S&P lost 6.7% in August 2023.
Ja,
the
gjør
S&P
det.
lost 1.4%, and now we're
Det gikk opp 60 poeng på closen nå. Nvidia gikk fra å være minus 0,18 til å gå pluss 0,13. Det er den som drar indeksen av jævla.
Yeah, and it gets to this idea too. I mean, you point out, sort of the big outsized move that we had back in 2011. I mean, that was a shock, right? I don't think anyone really saw that coming. And as a lot of our guests have said on the program today, it's like, look, S&P already did it, Fitch already did it, Moody's. It was kind of like, what took you so long?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Meantime, you got Fed officials saying, hey, folks, don't get too excited about rate cuts. Maybe we'll get one this year. We'll see what happens.
All right, well, the market's definitely taking Friday's news in stride here and maybe focusing a little bit more on the progress on that tax bill and some of the other efforts in Washington here to make things a little bit easier for companies. Green across the screen for at least 3 of the major indices here in the U.S. The Dow Jones Industrial Average up by more than 100 points or 0.3%. The S&P 500 is going to close up by just about 5 points or about a 10%. The NASDAQ Composite in the green, but we'll call it unchanged, only up about 4 points on the day. Similar move for the NASDAQ 100. Though in the small and mid-cap space, you still did see significant declines on the day. Dow Transport's down 0.3%, and the Russell 2000 down 0.4%, Carol.
All right, Romain, quick check on the S&P 500, guys. Kind of an even split here when it comes to winners.
Det var en akkurat nå stengte vi.
Hvor er det?
Ja.
Så stengte 0.
All right, let's take a look at the IMAP right now. You've got 7 groups in the green and 4 in the red.
Blitt nedgradert, og så stenger vi 0.
Healthcare shares up almost 1%. Consumer staples and industrials each gaining about.
Ja, det er faen meg insane. Det blir som at ingenting har blitt nedgradert.
About 1.5% right now, 1.6%, and in fact, for the year, it is down about 2.2%. We also have some weakness in consumer discretionary and tech as well, but those are more leaning towards.
Sist gang man nedgradert, så rammer det med 7%.
Let's get to some of the gainers. There were really some outperformers in the Monday trade. Paramount Group, ticker is PGRE, this one up as much as 20% during the trading session.
Som de sa, at folk venter på en tariffgreie.
It's a REIT, it's a major office landlord. New York City, DC, also San Francisco, about a $1.1 billion market cap, surging, as we said. The company's board initiated a review and evaluation of strategic alternatives.
Kommer ikke til å gjøre det, for om til neste uke så kommer de til å slite med varene sine i butikken. Men da må man, jeg tror ikke markedet reagerer.
Keep in mind, Wall Street Journal also making some points about this company's had a lot of red flags that have been out there in the last few months, and so.
Jeg tror ikke markedet, jeg tror ikke det er smarte mennesker som handler. Jeg tror det kommer til å reagere når det skjer. Jeg tror ikke det reagerer før det skjer. Jeg tror ikke de tenker sånn. Jeg tror nå også bare.
Did report earnings last week,
jeg tror ikke folk skjønner ting.
Coming in on those earnings. So analysts raising price targets for the company since it reported earnings. 16 changing price targets. The average change was up 11%. 15 analysts raised price targets by an average of 12%. So some optimism on the street. And Novavax, talk about optimism. Up as much as 30% during the session, finishing with a gain of about 15%. US regulators fully approved the company's COVID vaccine, so easing some investors' concerns after the clearance was delayed.
Just in time.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. Good stuff. So anyway, some
it's not mRNA, so I think that if you needed different sourcing, that would be something for you.
Yeah. I will say Moderna also an outperformer because maybe there's some, different thinking. I think everybody thought the government was going to be so anti-vaccines, and yet this happens for Novavax, and so investors also plowing into Moderna up about 6% today.
Okay, you got the gainers, Carol. I got the decliners. I do want to just take a look.
You had some trouble here.
Oh,
yeah. Det gick nog ner.
But you know what? The team was great. They were able to switch it out for me, so I appreciate that.
Nei.
Folk ikke mye der
Just imagine, no one would ever have known it.
Nei, jeg tar det bare.
Vi er minus 6 poeng nå.
Like a little sister? I should.
Killing me. You're killing me. 1% to the downside for JP Morgan. The company did reaffirm its net interest income forecast for the full year. This at an investor day earlier today. Shares fell earlier in the session, though. They hit a session low after an executive at the company said investment banking fees will fall. We also saw peer organizations fall as well. The company's CEO, Jamie Dimon, in a speech did warn against complacency in the face of a slew of risks. He cited everything from inflation and credit spreads to geopolitics. Ultimately, shares fell 1% today. I want to talk about solar stocks, in particular Sunrun, ticker RUN, down 7.8%. Shares of solar companies slumped. This after Republican lawmakers said that they had secured a commitment from leadership to end key clean energy tax credits earlier than planned as part of a sweeping deal aimed at allowing President Trump's giant tax and spending package to advance. Sunrun fell by about 7.8%. And finally, shares of Shake Shack, 1.6% to the downside. They fell after TD Cowen cut the recommendation on the company to hold from buy. They cited an already high valuation amid a challenging consumer spending backdrop.
Well, here's the interesting part when it comes to the bond market, guys. I mean, coming into the session, it looked like we were going to see some pretty intense action. The long end was selling off by 6 basis points already. Then we reversed course, and we actually ended with the whole curve lower by about 2 to 3 basis points. I do want to point out, though, that the 30-year yield still hit that 5% level. We hadn't seen that since 2023. And you look at a technical basis, and we're looking at a golden cross, guys.
Långt utan vattenviken eller?
Average looks to break above
It's mild.
medium-term moving average. So 50-day crosses above the 100-day. That's a golden cross. That tends to be a bullish signal, which means higher yields. And you wonder at some point, are we at that tipping point where yields wind up directly hurting stocks?
Yeah, it's a really good point, right? You kind of wonder where it all goes next. I have no good segue, except what?
There's no segue. Just take it because it's awesome.
All right, let's talk about the maker of Dum Dums and.
What?
Yeah.
What did you call me?
That's what
Don't take it.
That's what she calls you when you make a mistake.
Dum Dums, lollipops, and then you also have sweethearts?
From our youth.
Sweet little candies. I
Yeah.
don't know what they are. Well, apparently the maker, the CEO of the company, Spengler Candy Company, makes all this good stuff.
Rentene stiger også, så det er ingenting at det er så mye mening akkurat.
Pushing back on this idea of switching from
Japan er ned mer enn USA. Det er jo
Det var den i går.
Det falt det altså
Beet
2
juice,
dager
for
på rad.
example. It turns out beet juice, it might be a nice red, but guess what?
Jeg skjønner
He says
ikke,
it
det
tastes
skal
like
falle
beets.
noe.
Yes.
Det
And
kan
that's an
bare-
issue.
Let me tell you, this guy is a national.
Bare
He should be in charge of
tomatmelodien, det skal jo
HHS. I totally
vanligvis
agree
gjøre
with
når
you.
det
Look, if
ikke
you're gonna eat
kremer
candy,
så
I mean, it's like when they have like, upstairs, they have these healthy
Det
donuts,
bare
right?
stabiliserte seg, liksom.
But like,
Ja, men det er retail, vet du. De, ja, men de er ikke redd for å
It's called candy.
De er ikke redd for at det skal falle, for de skjønner ikke så mye.
let me get my chemicals.
Also, didn't they also say like it could be dangerous for allergies too?
Ja,
Like,
Kappen
that was
Andreas.
like here's the made up stuff. That's fine. But if you give you
Nei,
real things,
ja.
your
Vi
allergies
har
could
jo
kick
nå
in.
da
So
med
what you're
minus
saying is
6
it
Ja,
poeng.
den i dag er ikke
warning
noe.
label. And then everyone else looks like good with everything, right?
Doesn't it bother you guys that this red dye number 3,
Oh, jeg ble
which has
negativ.
been linked to cancer, and now they're only going to start phasing it out, I guess, in early
Ja, litt volum.
2027 will be banned. Isn't this stuff that was already banned in makeup? Like,
Ja, men det er ikke noe volum her.
But I don't know why. I don't know why
Why
you
does it
even.
need years to
I don't know why you need.
exactly.
Carol
Just,
Massar.
But
just
to Carol's point, I don't know why you need the dye. I mean, if you're eating something that tastes like it's not the flavor that the concern is. That's the concern if they use
Bring
the
on
dye.
the
But
beet juice.
if it's clear, Crystal Pepsi. Remember Crystal Pepsi? It was so successful.
What?
No. What?
No, I don't
He's
remember
being
this
totally
at all.
facetious.
No, I
Yeah.
know, but I don't remember that at all.
It was for a
Alright.
hot second in one
I
commercial.
wonder what Oscar the Grump or
Or
Grunch.
Grouch. Oscar the Grouch.
Nice
Oh
segue,
my
Carol,
goodness.
because
Oh
it looks like Netflix is making a
You're so
play
in the zeitgeist,
for
Carol.
Disney for that children's audience. Did you guys read the story that Netflix will be airing new episodes and old seasons of Sesame Street?
I love this so very much.
For people who've cut the cord completely and don't have PBS anymore, then you can get it now
We
on
used to have
Netflix.
HBO. We used to be on HBO. You get all the reruns and the new ones. It was fantastic. That partnership was broken down, so it's so great that you now have a way to get it.
Yeah.
Huge Sesame
Well, and a
Street
way to
fan.
get it. And what I really love about this too is that you have a way to get it without paying because they are partnering with PBS on this. So they're actually going to, unlike HBO, which took it off PBS.
I know.
And you had to wait, several months to see a new episode. Netflix isn't doing that.
No.
Yeah, they're going to air when it airs on Netflix. It'll be airing on PBS.
Letter of
So
the day's
if you
end.
can't afford the, however much it
And for
costs for
what?
Netflix subscriptions, you can just
For
watch it
Netflix?
there. And you can sit there with your dum lollipop.
Fortsätter med.
To be sure.
Ja, men det stopper sikkert der nede som det står.
You don't like pineapple.
Did you say gnarly?
I did say gnarly.
Mitt
Because
igjen.
pineapple lollipop, what's the point? Just don't even eat it.
Alex, are you into beet juice? Would you like the beet juice?
She would like
No, I would totally like the beet juice.
I
Yeah,
think
it's
it's
fine.
I like beet juice, but not with my
For det er ikke
Dum Dum
volum og
lollipop.
styrke
They're totally
nå
separate.
kvart over, da? Eller er det halv?
When's the last time you even had a
Bye Dum Dum.
Ja,
Just kidding. Just kidding.
Som regel mellom ja, halv 11 til.
I guess it's better when we're just.
You're not that far away from it,
Hey, I'm protected in this glass shield.
Kvart over
I'm
halv
telling
11.
you. All right, guys, that's a wrap. Good to be back together. Across platform, radio, TV, YouTube, Bloomberg Originals. We do love each other. I swear. We will see you. I know Alex is heading out. Scarlett's going to stick around with
She's
roommate.
already walking away.
All right, we will see you again. Same time, same place tomorrow.
This is Bloomberg Business Week Daily, reporting from the magazine that helps global leaders stay ahead, with insight on the people, companies, and trends shaping today's complex economy, plus global business, finance, and tech news as it happens. Bloomberg Business Week Daily with Carol Masser and Tim Stenevec, live on Bloomberg Radio, television, YouTube, and Bloomberg Originals.
It is Bloomberg Business Week.
Jeg skjønner ikke hva du mener. Kan du forklare sånn så jeg skjønner hva du mener?
Did you say holiday shortened week?
Did I say holiday?
Når du går inn på rommet der nå.
Right?
No.
We're here all week.
Hallo.
I know I am.
Whether you like it or not.
Jeg hører om det, Alex. Siden så har ikke kan prate så noen skjønner hva jeg sier. Når du går inn på walk-in closet, ikke sant? Jeg skal opp på venstre side da. Ja, men inntil veggen, ikke sant?
Maybe twice, we'll see.
Ja, det blir veggen, men når du går inn der, så skal du på en måte se klærne egentlig. Det en walk-in-closet, liksom, at du skal på en måte se klærne på høyre seg, da. Altså, du skal se klærne og systemet.
OpenAI's ChatGPT.
Jeg skjønner ikke en dritt. Kan du forklare meg hva faen som skjer?
Skapa, de på venstre sida. Med en gang du kommer inn. Så når du går inn i rommet, så skal du egentlig ha skapa på høyre sida, sånn at du ser klærne og alt sammen.
Ja, når du på venstre.
Når du går rundt, og så da ser du klærne på en måte.
Gjør det nå?
Nei.
Det ikke vanlig hva du snakker om.
Det du kan gjøre, det også, for jeg kikket opp i overtaket, og der det plast og så heistaket. Ta listene og så heistaket. Det ikke så mye jobb. Det bare å ta bort litt instruksjoner og så eventuelt jeg vet ikke om det 2-4 eller hva det oppe da.
Heisetaket.
Ja, hvordan heistaket var i det rommet.
Det ikke det. Jeg kan lukke av dosken.
In his view, he's like, okay, it could cure cancer, but the bad news is that it could kill us all. What's he so worried about?
That's right. So he is really worried about essentially catastrophic kind of risks that can come with AI, right? And that may sound really sci-fi and doomery, but if you think about it, the types of risks that they're preparing for are if essentially you can get more detailed information from these chatbots about things like, let's say, how to build a novel bioweapon than you could if you just simply Googled. Because these AIs are becoming smarter and becoming more able to sort of give you very personalized information, they're having to deal with some pretty scary risks.
It's kind of interesting, and I feel like when we talk AI, most folks, I feel like, Shireen, tend to say, it's okay, we got it. We'll have the safeguards in place. And here's someone who really seems to say, this thing could be incredible, powerful, but there are risks that potentially come with this.
That's right. And it's not just the really long-term, existential risks. There's also, in the short term, a real economic impact. So Anthropic is actually quite ahead. Some people say it's a matter of debate with their coding AI, meaning they make software that actually helps automate part of the engineering process. And over time, it's expected that these tools can essentially start to automate the entire engineering process, meaning what will happen for engineering jobs and sort of awkwardly for the company, what is that going to mean for its own staff, right?
Yeah, I mean, many of whom at this point are very highly compensated because these are some seriously in-demand jobs and some people who have skills that are seriously in demand right now. I want to go back to the fundamental difference between Anthropic's Claude and what Anthropic thinks about this philosophically, Shireen, and how that separates it or makes it distinct from the other companies that are out there. What is Anthropic doing to try to become this, or to try to be this safety-first AI company?
Yeah, so first of all, Anthropic was started by a group of former OpenAI employees. And there's a lot of sort of kind of infatuation, I would say.
The walk-in closet.
Why did they leave? Were there...
Taket var skjevt, så feil side av veggen, men det driter jeg, så bare henger klærne.
A more responsible alternative, a more safety-focused alternative
Oh,
to the other major labs at the time, OpenAI being sort of the one at the forefront. And how Anthropic says it's taking it more seriously today is that they put a lot of resources into some areas of research that are not monetizable, but are around safety. Things like what we call mechanistic
Det er nesten sånn ultra-bull-marked. Det går liksom ikke ned på noen ting.
So they put a lot of dollars in
Det er ganske
research
sjukt.
toward that. And then they also have quite
Okay,
digital
mistake.
protocols for how
Oh.
they should handle sort of every step forward as these AIs become more capable. So in my story, I wrote about, for example, how with their last big AI update, they actually pulled the brakes just days before the release and had to delay their launch because they were not sure the model was at the cusp of being more capable than they thought on the ability to potentially help people make bioweapons. So they say that A, they're putting the research toward it, and B, when it comes time, they're willing to actually pump the brakes and slow down if they think something is too risky.
As I was reading your piece, I was contending with the question of, does it matter?
Jeg skal bare ha skap, for jeg har ikke skap, Adrian.
Isn't the genie out of the bottle if the other companies aren't taking the same?
Det er bare det som mangler, jo, så nå så det er helt greit.
That's a very good question. And
Nei, det er masse småting da, men i hvert fall da har jeg fått til å henge opp, for jeg har klærne med bare ligger i poser og pappesker, liksom.
Competing to go so quickly, they will create a sort of secondary pressure to be more responsible on, for example, the protocols before you release an AI model and checking for all these risks.
Jeg er litt lei av å bare gå i yoghurtklær, for det er det som ligger tilgjengelig hele
They came
tiden.
up with a certain framework for safety testing prior to launch, and they show that other companies have put out similar frameworks after they did. So, you know, maybe there is some hope that they can exert positive pressure in the market on this way by being a more responsible actor and sort of creating a self-regulation. But that doesn't, as I, I talked to a lot of people in the AI industry who also told me that doesn't take away, right, from the broader sort of just capitalistic pressure to deliver, right, to return on investment. And we're talking about billions of dollars invested here in this company and others.
I mean, what's it going to do to this company, though, like to build on what Tim is saying? Like, if they're the lone, wolf out there kind of doing the right thing, where does it mean? Does it set them back? Is it just going to be a matter of time where everybody just kind of rolls over them? I just wonder how that plays out.
I think it will be the challenge ahead, right, is how do they sort of balance that ethical commitment to continuing to innovate at this fast pace. One thing that has worked in their favor recently is that they have seen sort of a mini exodus of OpenAI employees and researchers who were worried that OpenAI was not committed enough to its safety standards, who left. And of course, this is a fiercely competitive market in the AI talent space, right? So even, the company confirmed half a dozen prominent researchers have left from OpenAI to join them. That group, even if it's small, can make a big difference when, again, you're operating under such tight timelines to innovate.
Shireen, you're out there in San Francisco. You're around this technology and these people all the time. Should we be building bunkers?
Oh my God, Tim.
It's really funny because you can take a straw poll of 20 leading people in the AI industry here in San Francisco, and maybe half of them will tell you, you should absolutely be worried. Creating a bunker is totally rational, and the others might say you are totally freaking out. Everyone needs to sort of take a chill pill and just grapple with the fact that these tools are not even close to actually causing existential threats yet. But here's the problem. When a technology is moving so quickly, how do you anticipate the rate of change, right? Even if they can't do that now.
I was just going to say to Tim, I'm like, so what does that bunker look like? I mean, do we even know what we kind of...
Det er ikke sånn nok volumstig til å dytte det ned. Jeg tror bare det var bouncer.
Okay. 6 months to go.
Ja, ikke mye som skjedde akkurat nå.
Ghaffari, Bloomberg News AI reporter. Check out her story. It's fantastic.
Nasdaq stengte 0.
It's 4:21 on Wall Street. We do check markets all day long here at Bloomberg. Stocks rebounded with the S&P 500 index closing near a bull market. Traders look past the U.S. credit downgrade Friday by Moody's ratings. The Dow, the S&P, NASDAQ all advanced today with the S&P 500 index up 5, up just about 0.1%. The Dow higher by 137, up 0.3%. NASDAQ managed to eke out a gain in the final few minutes of trading, higher today by 4 points, little changed on the Monday session. The 10-year 4.44%, the 2-year 3.96%, gold up $26 the ounce, up 0.8%, and West Texas Intermediate crude up 0.3%, 62.68. Gold, by the way, at $32.30 the ounce. And this Bloomberg Business Flash is brought to you by Oracle. Attention growing businesses, Oracle is offering to cut your current cloud bill in half if you move to Oracle Cloud Infrastructure for new U.S. customers with minimum financial commitment. See if your company qualifies at oracle.com/Bloomberg. Novavax shares surged today after regulators fully approved its COVID vaccine. Novavax today up by 15%. And sources tell Bloomberg the Justice Department has opened a probe into a recent breach at the leading cryptocurrency exchange, Coinbase Global. Coinbase today did decline by about 0.9%. For on-demand news 24 hours a day, subscribe to Bloomberg News now, wherever you get your podcasts. I'm Charlie Pellet.
Nei, det er ikke en dritt her slik.
Hey, thanks so much.
Må snakkes etterpå, eller? Skjønte du sa avslappende, hvis ikke du legger deg?
Ja.
Skjer ikke noen ting. Vi snakkes alle sammen etterpå. Så ikke en dritt her.
This was after the company reported results last week. NICE did report adjusted earnings per share for the first quarter that beat the average analyst estimate. It also